Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Glory podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kyle Quinn. And joining me today is a special guest, Phil de Brun from Beyond the Pitch. And we're going to discuss the potential takeover of the club and also look at any potential options to replace Eriksen, who sustained an injury against Reading, and a few other topics. So, Phil, it's great to have you back on the show. How you going, mate?
All good, mate. Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
So let's get into it. United is up for sale. The process is ongoing. Jim Ratcliffe has put his hat in the ring. Nobody else has gone public with their interest yet. So, what's the latest from your point of view in terms of the potential takeover?
God help anyone that's listening to this that listens to me in my other podcast because this is going to seem really repetitive. Um, well, look, as I was saying on my own podcast, I think it's interesting that Jim Ratcliffe went public, something he didn't do when he was trying to buy Chelsea. Depends on who you ask as to why he did that. Andy Mitten was saying that Matt Dickinson at the Times, I think it was, who spoke to him, said he did that and he feels like he did that so that he could entice other individuals who want to bid for United as part of a consortium to the table. Depending on who you speak to, will tell you that Jim Ratcliffe's bid has been a bit chaotic. I don't know what they mean by that. I also don't really buy into these stories about United being irate at Jim Ratcliffe because he isn't intending to meet their buy price or anything. That's nonsense. United aren't forced to sell to anybody with a derisory offer, so why would they sell to Jim Ratcliffe if with a derisory offer? So, anyone can bid what they want. It's really irrelevant. So I think for United, it's there's obviously interest. I don't see any potential of a partial investment, given that the reason why they need investment is because they run the football club into the ground. So I think for United, there'll be a full takeover. It's a football club losing £2 million a week. There's obviously interest domestically from Jim Ratcliffe and others. I would expect the football club will be sold 100% by April, May, somewhere around that. The deadline, of course, whether this is actually a hard deadline or not, whether it's something the Rain Group would like to enforce, but maybe it's more arbitrary than definitive, is mid-February, of course, for bids. But I'm sure if they got a bid the day after that, it was about 10 million or a billion or two above what their asking price was, they take it. So, but given its current financial predicament, a football club has to get sold.
So, who do you think is the most likely consortium to take over? Do you think it'll be Jim, as most fans want, or do you think it's more likely to be someone from the Middle East or America?
Um, I think if the Middle East are interested, they'll buy the football club ahead of someone like Jim Ratcliffe, who is appraising United at a whole different level, who wants to pay a sensible price, not a ridiculous price. If the Glazers can't get sufficient interest from the Middle East, then they will sell to Jim Ratcliffe. But I think their preference would be to sell to the Middle East because I think they want a stupid price, which no one's been willing to meet at this point. There's a misconception that just because people are from the Middle East are just going to throw stupid money about. They really don't. And they're certainly not going to have their pants pulled down by a bunch of Westerners. So I think if they can entice sufficient interest, and I'm told there is interest, whether it's interest at the price the Glazers want, that's another thing from the Middle East. But whether they can entice that interest, if they can, then I think that's who'll end up owning it. Will go to a Middle Eastern oil state.
I know this is really boring, but how high do you think Jim is willing to go, and how high do you think our Middle Eastern consortium is willing to go?
It's impossible to say, but throughout this entire process, Jim Ratcliffe has talked repeatedly about making sure that United are appraised properly and a sensible price is paid. So I don't see Jim going to some stupid, ridiculous number to own Manchester United. So, and again, United are a highly distressed business that has to be sold. So, unless you're competing against somebody else that's willing to do stupid things to buy the football club, there's really no need to go to exorbitant levels because the club will have to get sold anyway. So it really all depends on how much interest there is in it. But I don't think Jim Ratcliffe would go above 5 billion.
Yeah, and I don't think he should either. I personally hope that the Glazers they don't get what they want. That it goes for a relatively mediocre fee. Obviously relatively speaking, because 4.25 billion, what Chelsea went for, is obviously a large sum of money. But I hope the Glazers don't get the 7 billion mark. I hope it is only about 4 billion. But the main thing is that they go and never come back. That's the most important thing. And obviously after that, it has to be responsible owners. Who are a lot more responsible than the Glazers. We don't want the Glazers Mark II. You've mentioned on your own show about the potential for a private equity firm coming in. That's the last thing we want, isn't it?
Well, if you're going to invest in Manchester United, you have to first ask why they need investment. And the only answer to that question is grotesque financial mismanagement. So, investment companies want a return on their money. Why would you give the Glazers more money to do exactly the same thing? Because you'll find yourself in exactly the same position 10 years from now. It's not really an issue if the Glazers run out of money. It's the Glazers having a really ridiculous business plan that didn't work out. So even if they dilute their ownership, that's going to come at a cost, because in the past they've only been willing to do the type of shares that don't give you voting rights, Class B shares that don't give you voting rights, and how the football club is run. They're going to have to surrender that, because that money comes with contingencies. And one of the contingencies is going to be, we're going to help run this football club so we can guarantee a return for our investors. They're not giving free money. There's the issue with the Glazer family siblings. Do they want to dilute their ownership and say, okay, I tell you what, Darcy, you own 30% of Manchester United. Right now, that's appraised at, I don't know, 300 million, just for talk's sake. Dilute that, reinvest the money back into Manchester United, and maybe you get more 5 years from now. I don't think they're going to do that. So I don't see any potential for that.
So just finally on this topic, when do you think the sale will be completed by? By Easter, do you think, or be later than that?
Well, if they're accepting the deadline for bids is mid-February, realistically, by the time you do due diligence and get proved in the Premier League and all that, you're looking, it took Chelsea a couple of months, so it'll be a few months from February, so April, May is realistic. If United are not sold by April, May, it's because there's not sufficient interest in it. But we already know there's potential buyers in the background, so I think April, May.
There's been plenty of talk about United having to comply with FFP rules, especially if they don't make the Champions League this season. Well, it looks like we will, fingers crossed, because of years and years of spending lots of money on players and not recuperating a lot of money in sales. Is that true? Because the thing with FFP for me that annoys me is that certain clubs don't seem to have to comply with it, and other clubs do. So I just don't think that United should even bother complying with it. What's your thoughts on it all?
Well, we haven't had any legal teeth for a long time with FFP. United have really, really good connections at UEFA through David Gill, and of course their previous communications director, Phil Townsend, works there. They'll be well aware of if they're sailing close to the wind. I think it's a convenient excuse right now. I think there's a million other ways around it if you really, really want it. So, I've heard from people that it would be an issue even if you need to get bought, because the income ratio versus debt ratio is too high. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a financial expert, but it would seem to me that given how Chelsea are operating, it would be a bit silly to put restrictions on United this summer if they get bought. I think what will also happen is a number of players would get sold for prices that United probably wouldn't have sold at before, because that income is no longer contingent upon are related to how much you get to spend. So I think like some Maguire, you'd have maybe 5 or 6 players in that United first team that would get sold this summer. So I don't see it being a major impediment. I mean, one minute they're talking about Harry Kane, and the next minute they're talking about FFP. I think by the summer it'll be completely irrelevant.
Yeah, you will. Todd Burley is found loopholes with FFP. The length of the contracts that they're handing out is insane. That's certainly one way around it. But it just annoys me that the likes of, and you know this yourself, that the likes of City and PSG have just completely went unpunished with FFP. There's arguably it's not enforceable. You know that City and UEFA went to court over this, and City won. So
Yeah, it's had
it
no legal
just
teeth.
it just seemed pointless to me now. It's totally defunct. So I don't see why United should worry about it. So a discussion there. Just you brought up something that which leads me to ask you this question, which is obviously a very important question. If the club is taken over in the spring, which we all hope it is, do you think the new owners will clear the debt immediately?
Well, that's part of what the Glazers are asking for as part of the sale. So you can't acquire an asset if the debt isn't paid off, because essentially that debt means that the lenders own part of Manchester United. So everyone's got to get paid. So there's no, I mean, I'm sure if the banks would be happy for new owners just to pay off the interest, but if you're going to assume someone else's debt, that'll be renegotiated. Everything else, so the Glazers won't be paying that. But if you're going to buy Manchester United and you can't afford to pay off the debt as part of the acquisition, you can't afford to buy Manchester United.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. And normally, when clubs do get bought over and there's debt involved, the new owner does to clear the debt during the process of buying the club. So it looks like that's going to happen here, and that'll be good news for all of us. Because going forward, we want to see the club's revenue being used every summer on buying new players, not going towards dividends and debt and interest.
Well, it has to be a use for the betterment of the football club beyond buying new players, because you can do Leeds and totally waste it. I'm talking about investment in infrastructure, investment back in ticket prices, investment back in other aspects of being a football fan that makes it affordable. So it'd be nice to see United use that to do more community work. To do, maybe I'm living in fantasy land. I don't know, but you know, there's a million other ways other than just spending on players. And I understand what, but see, this whole mindset is really an issue, because this is really why most people want a Middle Eastern consortium or a Middle Eastern individual take over the football club, not because for any other reason than they can play football manager every window. And I wouldn't want that United what's going on with Chelsea. But do you want someone in come and tell Ten Hag what players he has to sign?
No,
I wouldn't.
no.
So we have to be careful with that mindset.
That reminds me of something else. Normally, when a new owner comes in, he wants to appoint his own man in the dugout. I hope that doesn't happen at United. I hope the new owner keeps Ten Hag in the dugout. That's very important because he's making huge progress.
Yeah, I think whoever buys United will have the benefit of being able to calibrate this the sense of sentiment amongst fans already. It's not going to be a shock as the things that matter to them. I mean, this guy's just won a conflict with Cristiano Ronaldo. So it'd be very surprising if he bought United and didn't realise that Ten Hag's extremely popular amongst United fans, and to not get rid of him, you'd be an idiot.
Okay, so moving on a wee bit now, I'm going to come to Jake Green's comment here. He says, any news of a signing a midfielder? Now, there's only about 24 hours of the window left, and we've seen Christian Eriksen sustain an injury against Reading thanks to Andy Carroll's challenge, which wasn't his only Lucas challenge in that game. So, is there any potential for United to get another loan signing in here before the window shuts?
Well, there's always a potential, but the question is whether they get a signing in that's actually good enough to where, they're a capable deputy to Casemiro or capable deputy or Christian Eriksen and what have you. That's debatable. As I pointed out earlier in the show, United are losing 2 million a week according to It was either Native We Stand podcast or Talk of Devils, which one I can't remember which one. I think it was the Talk of Devils one, and they mentioned it on. Um, that's 100 million a year, circa. So I don't know where the money's coming from. I think if you had the money, they'd do it, 100%. I know Tielemans has been linked. Um, I think he'd be a good signing. But at this point, who is the bank lending the money to? I mean, it's a it was it's not like you have the money to pay for this. I mean, they're asking they wanted Malo Gusto, don't want him to wait, which is not a great sign sign for Wan Bissaka. But he didn't want to wait, so I think it'd be hard to see where the money's coming from to fund the new signing. I mean, United have needed a midfielder for a while. Um, I don't see where that. It's possible to get a loan deal, but I wouldn't I wouldn't be excited about it. I don't think it'll be someone that'll come in and make major impact on the first team. That money's just not there.
Jay Green says
Gravenberch,
Gravenberch.
I know he's the obvious one, of course, but like Gravenberch hasn't played. I don't think he's played a game for Bayern Munich, or very little, and that is the question. Is he good enough? It's almost like a Van de Beek situation at Bayern. I know Bayern have an exceptional midfield, but really is a guy who hasn't played all season ready to come and hit the ground running, because that's really what this is about. You need to be able to, like, this is the thing about Veghorst. Veghorst hasn't got time to settle. Veghorst has to settle now. So does he have time to come in and get fit? By the time he gets fit, makes an impact on the first team. It could be March before he does that. So I don't know. I think that if you can get someone like Tielemans, whose contract's up in 6 months, then why not? That would make more sense to me.
Yeah, I'd like that signing. Mark Anthony Murphy says here, bring back Hannibal Mabry. Is that even
No,
possible?
it seemed me mad. When you're playing every week at the championship, the development that he's going to get in the next 6 months, he's going to be a better player for United 6 months from now, having benefited staying at Birmingham, than what he would be if he came and played a bit part role at the football club for the next 6 months.
Yeah, some fans are very, eager to recall Ahmad from Sunderland in the January window, and I can understand that point of view. But like you say, he's going to benefit from the development of playing a full season in the championship and starting every single game, which he hasn't had so far, be it United
Mm-hmm.
or Rangers or Atalanta. So I think Ahmad will come back a better player in the summer, and hopefully he can then challenge the likes of Anthony for that right wing berth.
I completely agree.
Um, but yeah, what about long term? Obviously, Eriksen and Casemiro have been terrific signings, but they're both coming 31 next month. We obviously want to sign a younger midfielder in the summer. Who United looking at in terms of that market?
I mean, speculating about what United are going to do this summer is going to be impossible, because we
Yeah.
don't know who's writing the checks, and that's going to determine who their targets are. So, and worrying about long-term contingencies to Casemiro, I mean, I think Real Madrid did a really good job of doing that by bringing in the likes of Tchouaméni, Camavinga, and what have you. But Real Madrid are miles ahead of United in terms of squad. I mean, United have to get the first 11 right before you worry about the second 11. So, I think these are hard positions to fill, because really good young players want to play. You can't bring experienced players in because they don't want to sit on the bench. So the second backup spot is very hard to do. It's hard to fill. You usually fill that with good young players. So my guess is that come the summer, and I can see United looking more in the South American market as well, because Ten Hag did that at Ajax. They'll target young players.
Somebody said on social media earlier on that Cisco is a free agent, and that's something that United could bring in
Cisco,
for six
Isco.
months. Isco, sorry, what are we talking about? Isco, yeah. I don't really see that happening. Do you?
No, I think it would all depend on how bad Eriksen's injury is, and we're supposed to get an update on that today or tomorrow, whatever. Um, but no, I don't see that happening.
No, I don't either. So United have been going really well. Even the defeat against Arsenal filled me full of optimism because Arsenal are the best team in the league. United pushed them all the way without their best player. So I wasn't even that downbeat about that defeat. And apart from that, United have been going brilliantly since the World Cup. Since, so Ten Hag's exceeded expectations. Back in the summer, I'd have been happy with finishing in the top six, providing that Ten Hag was showing progress. But it looks like we're going to finish top four, and potentially win a trophy. And we're almost there in terms of the Carabao Cup final. Um, we'll be playing either Newcastle or Southampton. You'd think probably Newcastle. That'll be a tough game. But yeah, like, if you'd told us back in May, given how disastrous it was, that by next February we'd be in a League Cup final, we'd have bitten your hand off, wouldn't
I think you'd have taken less than that. I
we?
think, look, it all depends on how well they can stay clear of injuries going into the second half of the season because the drop off when they get injuries is massive. Casemiro and McTominay, or Casemiro and Eriksen didn't play against Charlton. United couldn't break them down until they came on. So, it'll be interesting to see what the team is tomorrow night against Forest. But, yeah, they have to be lucky with injuries.
Yeah, definitely. And according to Jake, Isco has agreed to join Union Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting one. So, any news? You probably don't know any more than me on this topic, but regards to Christian Eriksen's injury, is there any news on the length of time he may be out?
No, there's been nothing released on that yet. Certainly not. That was about half an hour ago. So, um, when players leaving on crutches, it doesn't look good. Obviously, it's precautionary too. He has a boot on. Concerning. The first thing I noticed him doing when he got hit by Andy Carroll was him tweaking his ankle and his foot. Um, really hoping it's not some type of a metatarsal injury where you're looking at 6-7 weeks and then another couple of weeks before he gets fit again. If that's the case, if Eriksen's out for that length of time, then I don't care what you need to have to do, but they have to get a midfielder. Their season depends on it.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you've talked about this yourself on social media, and so have I. I cannot believe that Andy Carroll didn't even get a yellow card for his lunge on Ericsson. Eventually, he was sent off for the tackle on Casemiro. And then, even worse than that, was Fabinho not getting sent off for that horror tackle in the Brighton game. These, I don't know, see the VAR who reviewed that and just recommended the yellow card. Uh, he's incompetent to say the least. I don't want to come out and say someone should lose their job, but these officials are very poor, aren't they?
Well, it's times like this where officials should be made to explain their decisions. I mean, I'm looking at this and it's. I mean, they've nuanced these rules so much. They've made the referees' life difficult, but this wasn't a difficult, nuanced decision. I mean, Fabinho had the face of a guilty party. Evan Ferguson is very lucky. I assume I haven't heard what the status is, but he could be out. He could have been out for a long, long time. The implications of that are massive. Brighton just sold Trossard for 27 million. They lose a young player, and Fabinho doesn't get sent off. Now Jurgen Klopp has been quite vocal in the past about tackles on Salah and some of his players, and about players needing to be protected and what have you. He's been quite vocal about VAR decisions that have gone against him. But I've noticed he was very quiet after the Wolves game, and I noticed he was very quiet about some mealy mouthed. Oh, mate, it's not cool if he did it, but I don't know if he did it because I only haven't seen it once. That is shit. Some mealy mouthed nonsense. It was a disgraceful tackle. But what's more disgraceful is that he wasn't sent off because this is precedent. So when someone does this next week, they've every right to ask, why am I being sent off and he wasn't? Right? I mean, when you look at the goal that Rashford didn't have was disallowed the weekend, and the one that was given at Wolves, it's an absolute disgrace. It's a joke.
Yeah, that was very disappointing. Great assist from Weghorst for the goal that wasn't given, but he was just marginally offside. Weghorst has had quite an impact so far. His link-up play is excellent. You'd be better with his feet than he is with his head. Everybody thought he was just going to be a big lump up front. He was going to get flick-ons, but he's much more than that. I don't think he's going to score bucket loads of goals, but
Didn't need
if
to.
we
Because Anthony
if
Martial doesn't have a body that can stand up to the rigours of professional football. And if Vegas
no,
doesn't score close to 10 goals, United will struggle to finish top four.
well, I hope that he does. We're really reliant on Rashford at the minute for goals.
Correct.
Bruno's starting to score again, which is positive. So yeah, hopefully Whitehurst can get somewhere between 8 and 10 goals, but um, he's doing really well, and I would advocate for him staying on as long as we sign a superstar striker as well. Like, did you see Victor Osman's goal last night for Napoli against Roma? That was world class. If we could get
Beautiful.
someone like him in, then we really will be challenging for the league next season, won't we?
It reminded me a bit of Mr. Red Charlton. Brilliant goal.
Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, the names being linked are Osimhen, Kane, Benjamin Sesko, and then who's the other one again? Vlahovic, because Juve, as you know, are in a bit of trouble at the moment financially. So United could potentially get Vlahovic maybe a wee bit cheaper than you'd expect. So yeah, United absolutely have to get a number nine who's going to score 25 goals, don't they?
Yeah, they've needed that for a while, and I don't think they're going to target Vlahovic because he's a bit cheaper. You know, when the new owners come in, that can't be the criteria for selecting a striker. Those are all very different forwards. They serve very different positions. You know, listen to Mourinho talk about Osimhen, and he's at the same level drop. What was that? Of course, they beat Rome at the weekend. So I don't think Sesko and Kane completely different forwards. One is a giant. So well, maybe if he keeps Weghorst, who's a 6'6" striker, he won't look for another tall striker. Because obviously, Weghorst gives United something different tactically. All depends on how he does between now and the end of the season. He's available for a decent price at the end of the season, less than 10 million. So it's a great opportunity for him. And I think in some sense, that's part of what's going to be interesting with Weghorst is, listen, here's an opportunity for you to earn yourself a contract at one of the biggest football clubs in the world. He'll be given everything between now and the end of the season. It's an amazing incentive. And with the fitness of Anthony Martial, he's become very important.
Yeah, I think Osimhen would be ideal. It seems to be most people in the comments are agreeing with that. The only reason why I wouldn't go for Harry Kane is because because of Daniel Levy, it would probably drag on to 31st of August, and I just cannot be bothered with that. I want to get the signing in as soon as possible, in June or July. Daniel Levy will try and bleed every penny he can out of the club, and was it Alex Ferguson said dealing with Levy was more painful than his hip replacement, over the whole Berbatov saga. So apart from that, yeah, I'd be on board with getting Harry Kane. Imagine top form Harry Kane with Rashford in his current form playing together. I mean, that would be unbelievable.
I don't think
So,
United will send Harry Kane.
yeah, well, he's been one of those players. One of my mates who even supports Arsenal keeps saying that I can see Keane in a red shirt someday at Old Trafford. I think it's going to happen, and he's saying again that it's going to happen in the summer. But yeah, and one of the reasons why I would prefer Osimhen is because he's younger, and we get more years out of him. I think you said that yourself, didn't you? You'd rather have Osimhen than Kane.
I would. I mean, Harry Kane would score goals for United. There's no doubt. I mean, he's a world class striker, but I don't see that happening. I don't see him going to United. Obviously, he wanted to leave Spurs over a year ago. It's a big decision for him to stay. Whether he stays or not, that's up to him. But I read an article yesterday that made me laugh hysterically. It's a Daily Star on Sunday. I mean, not exactly the most. I want to be careful with my words here, but not exactly
Reliable.
a parable of honesty. But they say King could cost net up to 300 million. And I'm going, who did this? Who wrote this? And then who published it? And who felt that this had any correspondence with reality? I mean, 300 million? What?
They must have been including his wages across a 5-year contract in that, just to
So
blow the figure up and make it more dramatic. Um, so a few comments here. Mad Thing says it's a major delusion that any of us can ever consider the possibility that Napoli will sell their most important player after winning the Scudetto. But after he wins the Scudetto with Napoli, where else can he go with that club apart from maybe winning the Champions League? But he'll go to play for, with all the greatest amount of respect, a bigger club that will pay him more money. I can see it. I know. Yes, they paid
well,
80
Napoli's a
million euro
massive
for him.
football club, and if you're winning Scudettos and winning the Champions League, you don't have a reason to go anywhere else. Whether they'll win the Champions League with Napoli, I don't know. Brilliant football club, massive stadium, massive support, football mad city. There's a lot of good reasons to stay at Napoli, but they usually sell their best strikers. I mean, Cavani, you can go through, there's tons of them. You can go through a list of number of players that Napoli sold that, so it wouldn't surprise me to see Osimhen go. De Laurentiis is not stupid. He's similar to Daniel Levy in that he gets top dollar for his players. They usually sell one or two every year, and with Juve in the position that they're in, doesn't leave him a lot of options in Italy. So I think he's gettable, but won't be cheap.
Yeah, because they paid 80 million euro for him from Lille, so they're going to ask. He's obviously going
Transfer,
to
by
cost.
the way, that's under investigation because it's allegedly inflated, but we'll see what happens.
That aside, obviously he's going to cost more than that to come to Old Trafford. He's probably going to be in the 120 million euro mark, I would say. Yeah, and you're right. Sure, they sold Koulibaly to Chelsea as well. Didn't they sell Hamsik too? So somebody said here they're not a selling club by any means, but
Well, they're not a selling club in like an Ajax or someone like an RB Leipzig or something like that. There, I mean, they don't buy players for the purpose of developing and selling them. I mean, they're a well funded football club, and so usually, like, I mean, as you were pointed out, Koulibaly. I mean, no one could touch Koulibaly for years. It took Koulibaly a good few years to get it there, and and so it'll not be an easy transfer, and there'll be more than just United interest in him. It all depends on where United finish. I do think United will finish top four, but you know, if Liverpool get bought, there'll be a lot of suitors for that guy. And Chelsea, I'm sure, will throw their hat in the ring. They're trying to go after big players. Um, so that's the type of transfer that would take months. So if United don't get bought till May, June, somewhere like that, I would be very surprised if a deal like that would happen.
and 12A here says we get the right offer for Rashford and he's a goner. No players unsellable. I don't think this is the time to be discussing selling Rashford given the form he's in. We need to be tying him down to a 5-year contract. Yes, I agree that no player is unsellable, but you want if you've got a superstar who's banging form, you want to tie him down. You don't want to be selling them, especially a club like United. So I take it you're full of confidence, Phil, that Rashford will sign a new deal.
Well, I think that for him, this is his best form at United. I mean, before he signed the last new contract, him and his brother was talking to PSG. They do like him. Tuchel really liked him. He was a manager at PSG before. Um, but I think, given United's current position, given what's going on at the football club, and it's a good position for Rashford to be in, that he didn't negotiate this contract 6 months ago, because now he's worth a lot more. And I think Ten Hag's getting the best out of him. I think for Rashford, he's a Manchester boy from Withenshaw. Um, I would be very surprised if he did not sign a new contract. I don't see any way that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it seems very, very likely. So someone who's expected to be back in the squad very soon, I actually thought he would make an appearance against Reading, is Jadon Sancho. Um, I think Anthony needs competition for his place. He's playing every game at the moment. He's come in for a lot of criticism from fans for not using his right foot, not going down the line, being too predictable with his play. So Sancho would certainly add something different. If we could get peak Sancho playing alongside peak Rashford, that would be something. So I take it you're looking forward to seeing Sancho coming back, but I have to be honest, we can't expect big things right away. He's obviously going to need time to recover his form and fitness.
It wouldn't surprise me to see United try to use Sancho in the same role that Eriksen plays. Um, because I think there's question marks about his pace and whether he's capable of playing as a left winger. Um, because he's very different from Garnacho, he's very different from Rashford plays on the left. Whether he's capable of playing out there, I don't. In the way Ten Hag wants to play, I don't know. All his goals came from central positions this season, so it wouldn't surprise me to see United try to play him centrally.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. But I don't think I know Ten Hag has played Dejan Tadic through the middle, but he seems to favour a big striker if he has one available. So I suppose Sancho could play number 10, as a second striker as
That's what I'm
well.
saying,
So
yeah, in the central
yeah,
role.
yeah. If we're not able to replace Eriksen in the transfer market, he is going to have to think outside the box, Ten Hag. So that could be an option. Somebody in the comments says Kobe Menu, but I think you couldn't expect him to come in and replace Eriksen. Eriksen plays almost every game. Menu's only 17 and still developing. He will get game time, but you can't expect him to replace Eriksen,
I
between
think
now and
he'll. I
May.
think. Yeah, I think he'll get 90 minutes against Forest. If you're playing for United at 17, you're a special talent. But Solitaire, he played 17, 16, I think it was 17. Angel Gomez. It's not a guarantee that you're going to become your first team player, but I think Ten Hag's forced to make decisions like this because he needs those players to emerge because most likely they'll not be able to get them in the market. So I think that's partly why the likes of Kobe Mainoo will get 90 minutes against, or certainly start the game anyway, so that he can get a glimpse against Premier League opposition in a game where United really should be able to go on and win it comfortably, or at least not lose it to where you would go out. If some of the fringe players go play against Forest and don't play up that level, and they're not ready. So I think that this is a great opportunity for Ten Hag to look at some of these young players and see how they do against Premier League opposition.
Do you think Garnacho and Palestri will start the game on
Yeah.
Wednesday night?
I think Garnacho will. I'm not certain about Police Street, but I think Garnacho will.
Yeah, I'd love to see Garnacho get more game time. I know he's been carefully managed by Ten Hag, but he's just an exciting player. I'd love to
He
see him
changes
start more
games when he
games.
comes on. When he comes on, he changes games. There's not a lot of people that you can bring on the game, adjust to the pace immediately and change it. Plus, he's great at exploiting tired wingers or tired fullbacks because he's so quick. So and skillful, obviously. So he's a game changer.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a lot more of the Fred and Casemiro partnership now that Eriksen's going to be unavailable for an unknown period. They're obviously well accustomed to each other because they played together for Brazil. And Fred's Casemiro's obviously been unbelievable. Him and Martinez have been incredible signings. But Fred has been decent this season, hasn't he?
Well, I think everyone's been much better than what they were last season. They're playing a
Wouldn't be
better
hard.
team. Well, they're playing a better team. They're playing for a manager that knows how to get the best out of them. But I mean, he's a good squad player. I wouldn't want to rely on him every week. But he gives United another tactical dimension. So he's very good at coming on, controlling games. They need Casemiro to control tempo. But Fred is very, very good at cleaning up, setting up attacks, and so he's a really good squad player.
And what about Casemiro's two quick goals against Reading? There was absolute quality.
You're
The
just watching a world class football in his prime. I mean, we don't. We've been spoiled at United watching a lot of good players, but we've also had a lot of shit, and we haven't seen anything like Casemiro in the United team for years.
Yeah, definitely. And who do you think? I think Maguire, McTominay, and Martial will be amongst the players who will leave in the summer, in my opinion. So, who do you think will replace Maguire's captain? Do you think it'll just be Bruno, or do you think it could be Casemiro?
I'm not certain that McTominay will go. Because McTominay offers United something that Ten Hag likes. If McTominay goes, it'll probably more be down to Scott McTominay wanting to lead the regular football than Ten Hag wanting to put him out. McTominay's height makes him unique in some sense, in that he helps United on set pieces. I've seen Ten Hag throw him up front. United are defending a game. They bring McTominay on when they're dealing with balls in a box. So I think that he gives them something a bit different. As far as Maguire, again, it'll be Maguire wanting to leave because he's not getting regular football, which is exactly the right thing to do. Um, I think one of the reasons why I don't sell him in January is they need to replace him. And the thing for Maguire is he's in a one fight. He's in a position with fight with Varane essentially and Lindelof for that right-footed centre back position, because when Martinez is injured, Ten Hag plays Shaw because he's left-footed. So it's an unbelievable demise for a guy that is an £80 million footballer, but it's the right thing, and he was massively overpriced. He's not an £80 million footballer, and like Ten Hag gave him the rope to hang himself, and so I think there's no more questions need to be asked about Maguire. We know what he is and what he isn't. I don't want to see him get criticised or abused, but it's not for Maguire. The other problem is the other two replacements that have come in have been so good that it's going to be really difficult to force his way back into a team on any consistent basis. And even if he did, he'd still be a bit unpopular with United fans because they'd miss the players they don't have. I mean, unless one of them get injured, I don't see him getting back in the team.
Yeah, there's been a lot of interest in Maguire and McTominay in the January window, but they're not going to leave because United can't afford to replace them at the moment. So they'll stay on to the summer. So if those clubs that are interested in them right now might come back in for them in May. So
Well, I'd definitely be able to sell him in May, the summer, no problems. There'd be plenty of football clubs that would take Scott McTominay and Harry Maguire. That wouldn't be an issue.
do you think Yuri Tielemans fits in with Ten Hag's style of play? What's your opinion on that?
Um, he's obviously a different player than Christian Eriksen. So he's a bit more dynamic, probably in Eriksen, a bit more energy, but not as creative. I think given everything that's available out there for the prices that are available, and given what the resources that have available, he'd be a really really good signing for United. The thing is that you can't just sign him for 6 months though. So he
No.
should only be brought in unless Ten Hag sees a future for him beyond the summer.
And he's not going to accept a 6 month contract at his age. He's going to
No,
want
of
a
course
5 year
not.
deal.
Of course. So you know that really is the issue. Is that for United, you can only bring him in if he solves a problem 3-4 years. Would fans be happy if Tielemans was brought in and then no other midfielder in the summer? I mean, I do think United need to bring a midfielder in now, and realistically, they don't have the option of buying an Enzo Fernandez or someone like that. So all things being equal, I think he'd be a good signing for United, and I would love to see it happen.
By the way, I think James Madison is an excellent footballer, but he's not
Mm-hmm.
going to displace Bruno Fernandes, so there's no point in talking about that one. But Tielemans obviously plays a bit further back, so he would be an ideal signing because we need someone in that position. And what I love about Tielemans is his ability to score goals from distance. He even scored one in the FA Cup final like that, so
Mm-hmm.
he, that's no bad thing. So if Ten Hag wants him, I'd be delighted to see him come. Either it's not going to happen in this window, let's be honest. But unless something amazing happens tomorrow, but if he comes in the summer, that'd be a really good signing. So it seems as if Chelsea are going to spend 120 million euro on Enzo Fernandez, crazy, and buying them will be on the move, probably Jack and Rice as well. So we could be in the market for these players. It's hard to predict really who we're going to sign in the summer, like you said earlier,
Impossible.
because you don't know who's going to be writing the checks.
Mm-hmm. It's
But
impossible.
there's plenty of midfielders out there anyway, that's for sure. Do you think that he'll give Fred an extension to his contract?
Yeah, I think when you look at the rotation of that squad before you deal with Fred, you need to have many more immediate options. So realistically, they're not going to go out and sign 3 midfielders this summer. So you deal with replacing, in my opinion, Van de Beek over the summer. Um, and you get in a young midfielder and that can do what he was supposed to be brought in to do. And you begin that transition and make sure they get plenty of games, make sure they play games. If you need to have that player right now, Christian Eriksen would have been rested in a lot more games. Because to be realistic, but they don't. So, and it is a hard position to fill, like I said, because most really exceptional young players want to play every week. Same with any experienced player, and so it's not that easy to do. We talked about Ryan Gravenberch at Bayern. He's going a really good young player at Ajax, hasn't played. It's a really, really hard position to fill, to get young players in that are good enough that the drop off isn't massive when you put them in.
Well, Gravenberch fits the bill of another player that Ten Hag knows, another Dutch player, I think. Even Waghurst, I don't think he'd worked with Ten Hag before, but he's from like the same region of Holland as Ten Hag 20. So they had that in common. Ten Hag, he likes to go for his tried and trusted, whenever he needs to. So it wouldn't surprise me if Gravenberch came in tomorrow, but I would say he preferred to fight for his place at Bayern Munich. So just finally, the goalkeeper situation. Are you happy for De Gea to stay on for another 5 years?
Not another 5 years. I think with someone like De Gea, he's got strengths and weaknesses, and a lot of people focus on his weaknesses, which are okay. It's understandable to some degree, but and take his strengths for granted. With another goalkeeper, you might get somebody that's not as good at shot stopping, but's better at the things that De Gea are weaker at. Does that mean that he'll end up the season a better player with more clean sheets? I don't know. I didn't see anyone at the World Cup where I felt massive upgrade on De Gea saying this guy. So it's not obvious.
No, it definitely isn't, and there's no one out there who's guaranteed to come in and be an improvement on De Gea. Like I say, there'll be goalkeepers out there who'll be able to do the things that De Gea can't necessarily, but they might be a weaker shot stopper. So it's one for the manager to decide, and I'll back whatever decision he makes on that. I think Dean Henderson's United career is over now, especially after that Talksport
Oh, it's
interview.
definitely over. People also become really obsessed with this playing out from the back, right? And it's so over fetishized. There's really only a few times in a game you can actually do this properly. When the ball is dead, you're not playing out from the back because it's too easy. Teams will get set. They know how to break it down, how to press, and you're not going to do it. So you do it in the middle of games, and if you do it at the wrong time, you get caught out. It's a game plan that allows zero room for error. Zero. And every single week in the Premier League, I see a team trying to play for the back get caught either through their goalkeeper or through a defender making a mistake and conceding a goal. So yes, it's important at certain times, but it's so overly fetishized that when you sweeper keeper, sweeper keeper, sweeper keeper, I'm not sure of that view.
Do you know what nearly gives me a stroke is when Martinez takes a goal kick to De Gea, and then De Gea out to Shaw, and then Shaw back to Varane, and Varane out to Wan-Bissaka, and we're being pressed by the
Well, it's just
opposition.
through every team, though. I mean, every team watching their own team goes through that. So it's not an easy skill to execute. Also, that defensive midfield position, and one of the reasons why Casemiro was so good, is when you play diagonal balls into a defensive midfielder, they typically have their back to the opposition, so they can't see what's behind them. If you aren't technically perfect, you will turn that ball over. And I saw Scott McTominay do that a lot, but I don't see Casemiro do that a lot.
Yeah, and there's times where De Gea plays it straight down the middle to the defensive midfielder. We conceded a goal against
Very
Brentford
dangerous
that way.
ball. It's a very
It's a
dangerous
very
ball.
dangerous ball to play, and it nearly gives me a heart attack, wasn't it? But it's been very enjoyable having you back on the show,
My
Phil.
pleasure, mate. Thank you. Sorry, I got braces on my teeth. My mouth's all funny.
No, I didn't really notice, to be honest. So if everyone could please subscribe to the channel, drop us a like in the video, and get your comments in down below. And I'll see you again then, Phil.
Yes, mate. Take it easy. Thanks, folks, for watching. Much appreciated. Take it easy.
All right, see you later.